Hi, folks. This is Jonathan Phoenix, the Carolina Storyteller, coming to you with an important message. Okay, this is an adult podcast, so it shouldn't be listened to by children. And if you're listening to this, I assume that you're an adult. And if you're not an adult, that's bad, because some of the things that we cover on this podcast are topics that really younger ages shouldn't be listening to. There's murder, there's death, there's blood, guts, and gore. Things that really they don't want to be exposed to. So as an adult, I'm going to ask you to keep the kids away. But I don't think every one of you is doing it. So I'm going to have to do something to curb this behavior if you don't stop. Maybe I'll tell your kids where Santa's real address is. Or maybe I'll tell them where babies come from. Or how to get a hold of the Easter Bunny and the Tooth Fairy. Or maybe I'll just tell them why the mailman always brings them birthday presents and why Daddy is really mad about it. So remember, keep the kids away from the adult material and enjoy the show. This is the Carolina Storyteller.
In the dark woods where shadows creep, stories rise as the campfire reaps. Jonathan's voice a haunting thrill. With every tale he bends on will. Echoes whisper, the night draws near. By the firelight our fears collide. The Carolina Storyteller, our guide. Through the spooky, the feathering fight. Fables of darkness igniting the night. Of the night. The ladder tales of fright and dread. Every heartbeat a path we tread. Phoenix spins his
Welcome back to Carolina Storytellers, folks. I am the Carolina Storyteller, Jonathan Phoenix. I'm glad to have you here. Tonight with me, I have members of the cast and crew from Valmont, the Black Raven Chronicles, here for a couple of episodes. This is going to be the first one of those. Guys, say hi. Introduce yourselves.
Hello, I am the Vampire Queen, Jacqueline Burns, the Assistant Director for Valmont, the Black Raven Chronicles, and your resident menace to society.
Welcome to the show. Next up,
I'm Chris. I'm not yet cast, but probably will be an extra in the Valmont series. And I'm spinning yarn while the Carolina Storyteller spins you some yarn.
welcome to the show.
I'm Shez, I'm Chris's partner from all the way down under, and yeah, I am also here spinning yarn and listening to some well-spun yarn.
You know, it's funny because Spinning Yarn was actually going to be the original name for this show, Spinning Yarns. But I went to go and put the name in there, and it turned out that there was already a Spinning Yarns show about spinning yarn. So it became the Carolina Storyteller that it is today. We also have joining us Edel, who may be in and out. Adele, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
So Edel is joining us. She's on the mend. For those of you who don't remember, Adele is going to be playing Lucifer and Samantha Morningstar. So she's a twofer in the show. And you all hear some great stories from the low country of South Carolina. So who's ready for a story?
I think we're all ready, boss. Go ahead and spin us up a yarn.
Okay, so this one comes from actually Berkeley County, where I live in South Carolina. Understand, I am about 20 miles north of Charleston, South Carolina, just a little inland. It's the home of Francis Marion, who is the famous swamp fox. In fact, there's a swamp north of me called the Swamp, which was so named because when it was put on the map that was given to Cornwallis, they said that is one hell of a hole of a swamp there. And that's what it was named, Hellhole Swamp. And it was where Francis Marion did most of his hiding during the Revolutionary War. But we're not going north of me. We're going south of me to the town of Goose Creek, which is, I say town, it's roughly 60,000 people. So anyway, this story takes place in Goose Creek, South Carolina, which is not north of me, but south of me by about 15 miles. I'm actually closer to Goose Creek right now, where I work at, than I am when I'm at home. Halfway, technically, but it's a little over halfway. And Goose Creek is a nice little community. It was settled, well, people started settling around there in the 1820s, more or less. I think the church that we're going to talk about was established a bit before that. We're going to talk about the St. John's Church there. And the story we're going to tell, I like leaving names out because I don't know if people are going to get mad about their names being thrown in there. And these are some local families that their story pertains to. But the story goes that a young man who was just settling in Goose Creek was one night attending a soiree, one of these antebellum parties. Now, this was pre-Civil War, so, there was hooped skirts and the dresses, and he was from up north, so it really didn't interest him much. So he decided he was going to go out and take a walk, and as he's taking a walk in this relatively wooded area, one of our famous Carolina storms comes on, which, these things can come on with absolutely no warning and just drench you. Jackie, you can attest to
Especially
that,
living
right?
near the mountains where I get to spend every day seeing the most bright, sunshiny skies, and yet I look out, see the mountains over off in the distance, and they just have the most powerful storms above them, and I don't know if I'm actually going to get to see them or if they're just going to pass me by.
Yep, South Carolina has the weirdest weather ever, I think. We never know what the weather is going to be in South Carolina. They say that they can predict the weather. They can't predict the weather. They can't even predict where hurricanes are going to come through, right? Like, seriously. But this man gets caught in this storm as he's out walking, and so he runs to find shelter, and he finds shelter in the chapel of an old church. And the first thing he notices, the symbol above this church is a goose that looks like it's feeding its young, but it looks like it's ripping pieces off of itself to feed its young. So that's the first thing that stands him. And he walks into the church, into the chapel. And I guess back then, they didn't really worry about you walking into the church. It was kind of you could go in at any time you wanted to. Nowadays, if you ran into a church in the middle of the night, Popo would come and get you. But back then, I guess they didn't care. A church is a church. It's a place for you to seek refuge, no matter what time, no matter when. He seeks refuge from the storm in this church. And for a few minutes, he's taken in by the artistry that is its construction and the beauty of the building itself, because, these older churches, they kind of put some work into them. They're not these thrown up things that they do nowadays that are mini malls converted. No, they put some work into the artistry of the church. And this is important because he's not paying attention and hears something in the church with him. And it occurs to him that he's not alone. And he looks back and there is a lovely young woman just kind of sitting there praying. And of course, ma'am, I beg your pardon. I didn't mean to disturb you. I was just trying to get in out of the rain. She's like, it's fine. She was here visiting her family. She liked to come and visit her family at night and speak to them. It made her feel better because they had passed on. It liked the company. And the two of them began to talk. And she had the most strangest conversation, it seemed. She talked about death and dying, how she thought death was like being at peace, and how she felt that we lived life afraid of death, but really it's not something to fear, it's something to welcome. And this was just the most unusual conversation he'd ever had with a woman, and of course it fascinated him. She was equally beauty, so he was taken aback by her. So she asked him if he wanted to go with her to see her family, and he said yes, sure, why not? What, I'll walk with you, pretty lady, around this graveyard. And so he walked with her through the graveyard. She introduced herself as Edith, by the way. They walked around the graveyard, and she showed him the family vault where her family was buried and where the other gravestones of her family were buried. And she, of course, spoke to them and, things like that. And then they walked back out and he bid her good night, asked if he could see her again. And she said, well, I'm here most nights. You're welcome to come and see me. So he said he would. So he goes back to his party now that the rain has quit, tells his friends of this strange woman that he's met, most captivating. And of course, his friends are all happy because he's just moved down here and he's already found someone that he's taken with. And that just means he's more than likely to settle down and stay here and, be part of the community. They're happy about it. So they're happy for him. And so the following nights, he would continuously go and he would have these conversations with Edith. And they would have just the most deep and interesting conversations while strolling through the cemetery. And after a week or two, he is so taken with her, he reaches out and he says, Edith, may I court you? And immediately she's just like, you can't court me. You can't understand or fathom love in a true way. I don't believe that you can love me as much as you say you do. We just met. And he comes, he talks to her, and he tries to profess his love for her day after day until finally she says, if you are really this in love with me, then show me. Come catch me. And she runs off into the graveyard. And she starts running towards the family vault, and he follows after her. And he loses sight of her, doesn't know where she's gone. He looks around everywhere. He can't find her. And then he's standing in front of the door to the family vault. And for a moment, he thinks he hears her scream, help me. But it's coming from inside the vault. And he's really bewildered by this. But, it's his Edith. She's in trouble. So he grabs the iron bar to the vault, yanks it open. And when he does, corpse of a woman falls upon him. And for a minute, he's, like, oh my God, what the? And then he starts to recognize the dress she is wearing, the jewelry that she has on. And he realizes that this corpse is his Edith. And he just breaks down into tears. Next morning, they found him there holding her body. Edith had been the eldest daughter of the family that owned that mausoleum, and she had taken ill and been buried. And it turned out that, they didn't do a lot of embalming back then. They just went, oh, you're dead. We're going to put you in a casket and put you in the, thing. Put her in there. She was still alive. And when they examined the caskets, they found that it was torn to shreds from her tearing her way out of the casket. And there were marks all over the door as she was trying to make her way out of the door. And they determined that she died of starvation, waiting for someone to come and find her. It is said that the young man never found love again, never married. And after he passed, it is said that you can find his spirit wandering around the graveyard of the St. John's Parish Church in Goose Creek, looking for Edith's spirit, hoping that in death he can reconnect with the woman he loved so much when he was alive. But you guys are still there, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, just making sure. Waiting on commentary on the story or something.
Not really sure any commentary to give. It's just a very tragic tale.
It really is.
The reason they made safety caskets back then.
Yeah, but it doesn't help when they make a safety casket and then put it in a giant vault with a big iron door.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah, but if you can afford a giant vault with a big iron door, you're probably someone of a significant amount of wealth and influence, which means you're really not that
Which
smart.
is tragic because if you can afford that giant vault with the big iron door, you can afford to have somebody stand watch over it for several days to make certain.
You would think that, and that's the big kicker here is that she
Or that if you gave a rat's ass about your family member.
she basically was buried alive from what
Mm.
may have been a very healable situation, but they didn't pay attention, I guess. And for that, suffered, I guess, what some would say is a fate worse than death.
A slow, painful death like that?
Being buried alive, that's the fate worse than death, is to be dead but not be dead,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, my mind goes immediately to who profits from not checking if she's actually alive. That's because I'm a cynical bitch.
That's a good question, is who could have profited? Who would have been so cruel?
The simplest answer would just be, oh, our poor daughter has died. What a shame. Don't worry about doing an examination. She seems perfectly dead. Just chuck her in and we'll worry about the next one.
Yeah, the oldest daughter passes away. Maybe it's because he didn't want to pay the dowry on her marriage. Who knows?
I mean, that's what I had to do with my first three.
Easier ways than to pay the dowry than to kill her off.
More or less. Nobody wanted to pay the dowry for me, so the first three men who tried courting me wound up, well, let's just say they went to pieces.
So we all talked about how horrible this story is. And yeah, you guys might notice there's some cuts and edits in this episode that are a little bit different. And that's because I am surrounded by idiots. That's my best Scar impersonation for the day. Beside that, this story is really well known in the area. Of course, it has those ties of lost love and love unrequited and loving someone that you really can't have. Ties into all of that, doesn't it? Hits you with all those hard points, don't you think?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I want to thank the guys from Valmont for being with me tonight. Guys, what are you looking forward to about the show that's going to be coming in less than 90 days?
Well, if nobody else will start, I'm definitely looking forward to seeing all the amazing talent I have and all of the wonderful work that we've put into it come to fruition in an amazing show that is likely to change the landscape of podcasting and audio drama, if for no other reason than bringing back the old audio storytelling formats that used to be used back during the days of radio.
I like that. I mean, I'm not bringing it back. I'm just catching on to it. I'm hoping to add a little bit more oomph to it with these stories. And I think Freg is definitely a character that is going to bring some interesting stuff to it. For the cast and crew of Valmont and, of course, the Carolina Storyteller, I want to thank everybody for tuning in today. Remember to go over to patreon.com/The Carolina Storyteller to support the podcasts. You can get behind the scenes stuff from The Carolina Storyteller and Valmont there. And remember, Valmont is going to be airing on December 1st, wherever you listen to your podcasts. You just got to look up Valmont, the Black Raven Chronicles, and get ready to have your minds blown. We'll see you next time. Stay spooky, my friends.
And remember, everybody, don't let the vampires
Wake up,
bite.
Mr. Belmont. Your ride is over.
Hey, Afrik man.
About time you woke up.
Mr. Valmont?
Yeah. You guys closed for a private function?
You'd prefer a 300-year-old vampire wait on your doorstep.
Who are you? And where the fuck am I?
And I will always win.
The Fed started hiring people that can read?
Just leave this file with you and trust you've still got the undercover skills I remember so well. There are values in mortality that we can only dream of, Gabe.
In Valmont.
You gave me blood? What do you think I am? A vampire? Hey, why don't you ask Satan? You guys are family, right, Ms. Morningstar?